Are we back? Are we back? It's not giving me a chat box now. That's annoying. And this will be an old chat box. I'm gonna have to open my stream. If you are back, do say hello. Do say hello. I'm just trying to get my chat back. I'll just refresh this as well, just in case. Yeah, there was someone popping in. I'm just trying to get my chat back. That's all I'm doing, and then I'm going to jump back in. Here we go. So Lightweaver has returned. Shannon as well. Mama Fox, Mango, Laura or Lily, Teffy, Lightweaver, Olivia, Boo Boo Kitty, Sherry, Victoria. We've got some Fox fans back in the chat. Sasha is back as well. Good news. Good news indeed. Juz is back. Yeah, no idea what happened there, why it disconnected. It was still showing my internet connected at the bottom on my laptop, but it just said, you know what? I've had enough. Enough of this silliness. Enough, and maybe it was the witches. Maybe it was the spirit of the witches. You know what they're like. Just out there to mess with you. Using their black magic. And yeah, as Mama Fox said, I was in full flow there as well. I was in full flow. And kept on going as well for a couple of minutes. Hello there, T-Clace24. Nice to see you. Yeah, so I'm gonna have to wind it back. I heard in the chat that you were saying that woman over there was repeating. I think that was the last thing. Oh, but that was the thing that was confusing me. Was it that skinny little woman over there, shouted Mr. Jenkins, or was it that woman over there, my grandmother said? I think either way, I will just wind back to by now half the dining room was watching our little group and go from there. I think that's safe, and it just gives me a little bit of flow. Thanks very much, Laura. That's really nice of you to say. Thank you. So it was that woman over there. Alright, okay. But I'll still just wind back to the start of this paragraph. It's only a few lines just to get the flow back in. Okay, so yeah, I didn't get too much further, to be fair. Whew. But I was in full flow. It's okay. Alright. It's just been one of those days. Okay. Well, hello to everybody in the chat. Very nice to have you here. And if you're only just popping in, if you didn't realise I was streaming, welcome. And I hope, because there was quite a big gang as well before the disconnect. I hope some of you that got kicked out with the disconnect do come back and finish the rest of that chapter, because we're so close to the end now. Alright. Let's do this. I'll get back in the flow. I really hope you're enjoying it. Lovely to have you here. Don't you worry about that. You can shout all you want. Whew. Okay. My back is super tired. It's really, really bothering me, actually. But it's okay. I'd got so involved, I wasn't even thinking about it anymore, but I can feel it again now. Okay, let's get going. Back to the action. We'll just pretend nothing happened. By now, half the dining room was watching our little group. Knives and forks and spoons had been put down all over the place. Heads were turning round to stare at Mr. Jenkins as he stood there, spluttering and shouting. They couldn't see either Bruno or me, and they were wondering what all the fuss was about. "By the way," my grandmother said, "would you like to know who did this to him?" There was a mischievous little smile on her face, and I could see that she was about to get Mr. Jenkins into trouble. "Who?" he cried. "Who did it?" "That woman over there," my grandmother said. "The small one in a black dress at the head of the long table." "She's our SPCC!" cried Mr. Jenkins. "She's the chairwoman!" "No, she's not," my grandmother said. "She's the Grand High Witch of all the world." "You mean she did it? That skinny little woman over there?" shouted Mr. Jenkins, pointing at her with a long finger. "By gad, I'll have my lawyers onto her for this. I'll make her pay through the nose." "I wouldn't do anything rash," my grandmother said to him. "That woman has magic powers. She might decide to turn you into something even sillier than a mouse. A cockroach, perhaps." "Turn me into a cockroach?" shouted Mr. Jenkins, puffing out his chest. "I'd like to see her try." He swung around and started marching across the dining room towards the Grand High Witch's table. My grandmother and I watched him. Bruno had jumped up onto our table and was also watching his father. Practically everyone in the dining room was watching Mr. Jenkins now. I stayed where I was, peeping out of my grandmother's handbag. I thought it might be wiser to stay put. Chapter 21. The Finale. The Triumph. Mr. Jenkins had not gone more than a few paces towards the Grand High Witch's table, when a piercing scream rose high above all the other noises in the room, and at the same moment I saw the Grand High Witch go shooting up into the air. Now she was standing on her chair, still screaming. Now she was on the tabletop, waving her arms. "What on earth's happening, Grandmamma?" "Wait," my grandmother said. "Keep quiet and watch." Suddenly all the other witches, more than 80 of them, were beginning to scream and jump out of their seats as though spikes were being stuck into their bottoms. Some were standing on chairs, some were up on the tables, and all of them were wiggling about and waving their arms in the most extraordinary manner. Then, all at once, they became quiet. Then they stiffened. Every single witch stood there as stiff and silent as a corpse. The whole room became deathly still. "They're shrinking, Grandmamma," I said. "They're shrinking just like I did." "I know they are," my grandmother said. "It's the mouse maker!" I cried. "Look, some of them are growing fur on their faces. Why is it working so quickly, Grandmama?" "I'll tell you why," my grandmother said. "Because all of them have had massive overdoses, just like you. It's thrown the alarm clock right out of whack." Everyone in the dining room was standing up now to get a better view. People were moving closer. They were beginning to crowd round the two long tables. My grandmother lifted Bruno and me up so that we wouldn't miss any of the fun. In her excitement, she jumped up onto her chair so that she could see over the heads of the crowd. In another few seconds, all the witches had completely disappeared, and the tops of the two long tables were swarming with small brown mice. All over the dining room, women were screaming and strong men were turning white in the face and shouting, "It's crazy! This can't happen! Let's get the heck out of here, quick!" Waiters were attacking the mice with chairs and wine bottles and anything else they had at hand. I saw a chef in a tall white hat rushing out from the kitchen brandishing a frying pan, and another one just behind him was wielding a carving knife above his head, and everyone was yelling, "Mice! Mice! Mice! We must get rid of the mice!" Only the children in the room were really enjoying it. They all seemed to know instinctively that something good was going on right there in front of them, and they were clapping and cheering and laughing like mad. "It's time to go," my grandmother said. "Our work is done." She got down off her chair and picked up her handbag and slung it over her arm. She had me in her right hand and Bruno in her left. "Bruno," she said, "the time has come to restore you to the famous bosom of your family." "My mum's not very crazy about mice," Bruno said. "So I noticed," my grandmother said. "She'll just have to get used to you, won't she?" It was not difficult to find Mr. and Mrs. Jenkins. You could hear Mrs. Jenkins' shrill voice all over the room. "Herbert!" it was screaming. "Herbert! Get me out of here! There's mice everywhere! They'll go up my skirts!" She had her arms high up around her husband, and from where I was, she seemed to be swinging from his neck. My grandmother advanced upon them and thrust Bruno into Mr. Jenkins' hand. "Here is your little boy," she said. "He needs to go on a diet." "Hi, Dad," Bruno said. "Hi, Mum." Mrs. Jenkins screamed even louder. My grandmother, with me in her hand, turned and marched out of the room. She went straight across the hotel lobby and out through the front entrance into the open air. Outside it was a lovely warm evening, and I could hear the waves breaking on the beach just across the road from the hotel. "Is there a taxi here?" my grandmother said to the tall doorman in his green uniform. "Certainly, madam," he said, and he put 2 fingers into his mouth and blew a long, shrill whistle. I watched him with envy. For weeks I'd been trying to whistle like that, but I hadn't succeeded once. Now I never would. The taxi came. The driver was an oldish man with a thick, black, drooping moustache. The moustache hung over his mouth like the roots of some plant. "Where to, madam?" he asked. Suddenly he caught sight of me, a little mouse, nestling in my grandmother's hand. "Blimey!" he said. "What's that?" "It's my grandson," my grandmother said. Drive us to the station, please. I always liked mice, the old taxi driver said. I used to keep hundreds of them when I was a boy. Mice is the fastest breeders in the world. Did you know that, Mom? So if he's your grandson, then I reckon you'll be having a few great-grandsons to go with him in a couple of weeks' time. Drive us to the station, please, my grandmother said, looking prim. Yes, Ma'am, he said. Right away. My grandmother got into the back of the taxi and sat down and put me on her lap. Are we going home? I asked her. Yes, she answered. Back to Norway. Hooray! I cried. Oh, hooray, hooray, hooray! I thought you'd like that, she said. But what about our luggage? Who cares about luggage? She said. The taxi was driving through the streets of Bournemouth, and this was the time of day when the pavements were crowded with holidaymakers all wandering about aimlessly with nothing to do. How are you feeling, my darling? My grandmother said. Fine, I said. Quite marvellous. She began stroking the fur on the back of my neck with one finger. We have accomplished great feats today, she said. It's been terrific, I said. Absolutely terrific. Okay, I have brutally misrepresented the length of this book. So that wasn't the finale, but it doesn't matter. I don't know how I missed that. I think because there was a really, really long one previously. I think when I was just like grabbing through, I thought that this like whole bit here was the last bit. I'm such a silly sausage. But it doesn't matter. It does not matter. Although I'm instantly missing the Grand High Witch. I was really hoping there was going to be some more Grand High Witch, but never mind. We had some fun chapters with her previously. I thought she'd have some like famous last words, you know. I couldn't remember how it went. It's such a long time since I read this. Okay, so there's 2 bonus chapters. 2 bonus chapters, alright? So I'm going to have to... It's because they don't have chapter numbers. So I'm going to have to do some counting back and make sure that I document all this correctly. Okay. 2 bonus chapters coming up. I know it's a long little short story, isn't it? But it's also because like I read quite slowly at times, and you know I pause little bits, and obviously there's like the picture time and everything. Okay, I'll do one final picture time before the final picture time. But I guess that was the finale in some sense. That was the sort of crescendo moment. So pictures. Oh wow, there's all this, yeah, from before the disconnect. All right. Yeah, absolutely, Laura, absolutely. I'd already read the first 14 chapters on previous streams, and they're all saved in my video archive, so you can go back there. And then we had a few chapters before the disconnect, and then we've got these final chapters here. So all these things will be saved on my channel. There is a playlist for it as well, like Shannon says, and I'm also making a complete video with them all stuck together. There'll be little bits of chat in between and the pictures and things like that as well, but all the chapters will be running together in one video as well. So I've already got the first 14 all in there and sort of edited roughly how I want it, and then I'll be sticking the rest in as well. So double yes. So yeah, pictures before the finale. Oh, you're very welcome, everybody. You're very welcome. If it hadn't have been for for the power cut and then for this disconnection, it would have felt quite smooth. I mean, it was longer than I expected because, like I said, I was going to prepare a little bit better than this and do like a witches marathon and finish the whole thing off just in one stream. And then I decided like, no, I've not been streaming for a while. I'll just do Hobbit chapter 3 more chapters, and then I'll finish off the rest in the next one. And then underestimating how much was left. And it's funny because I think when I'd last looked at it, a couple of months back, like looked at it properly, I had been surprised at how many chapters were to go. So then when I'd looked at it today, and I was like, oh, there's only 7 to go, actually. I could maybe squish it out. And I was like, oh, but I'm going to do The Hobbit and warm up with that. And then I did those 3 in a good flow. Oh, there's only 4 more. But there wasn't 4 more. There was 6 more. And then we've had disconnects and stuff. But don't you worry. No, thanks, everybody. I'm just really happy you're enjoying it. It's really great. And it'll be lovely to have completed the book as well. It's really, really nice. Thanks ever so much. So we had William the waiter coming for the order. I hope I didn't mix up the voices there. There was no clear indicator that that William can't have been the one that said some old lady thinks the food's too tough and they spat. That can't have been grandmother's food. I don't think so. I'm really hoping that was a separate... Yeah, it must have been a separate waiter because the boy would have said that William said it as he just said the waiter because he knew William's name. So, no, I was worried that I was mixing up the voices there. But no, they were separate. They were separate waiters. So, anyway, here is William coming to take Grandmama's order. And then we have the start. Sorry, this is not oh, there we go. It's not focusing as well as it was earlier when there was lighting outside as well. But yeah, the start of the dash. And goodness me, the boy as the mouse, he does well. Whilst carrying that bottle as well, that is impressive. That is seriously impressive. And then this is the chaos of the kitchen. Organised chaos, though. And apart from some pretty messed up behaviour going on with the spitting and the food, I think the boy was quite impressed with the whole thing. So... And then we have some action shots. I like how they squeeze these in among the writing. It's really nice. So he's trying out his tail acrobatics, swinging from handle to handle. And up he pops onto the top shelf. And starts his dash across. Sees the saucepan below and pours the delayed action mouse maker. The plan is going swimmingly until he gets a little bit carried away. Gets a little bit carried away with the acrobatics. Is enjoying his tail so much, and in pure Roald Dahl fashion, boom. You have to have some carving knife, mouse tail amputation action. This kind of behaviour, gloating in a way, takes his eye off the ball. It's got to be punished in Roald Dahl's brutally realistic world. Brutally realistic, however zany and fantastical. And the poor boy has his tail sliced. And then the escape begins. He could have had a relatively easy way out, perhaps, and remained unscathed, but here we go. The black boots, the stomping, and up the trouser leg of the unwitting chef of some description he was. And this is the other chefs realizing that there's some shenanigans going on and calling out for him to take his trousers off and everything and get rid of the mouse. I wonder if this is even supposed to be the knife that had chopped his tail. It feels like there's a little bit of blood there at the bottom. Rather gruesome. Oops, sorry, I went a bit close. But yeah, shocked faces. Dropped knife. But he seems to have disappeared. Oh, there wasn't a mouse. Bosh, gone. And into the potatoes he goes. Look at his little mousy nose sticking out of the spud bag. Out at Tatey's. And the grandmama wisely says that she'll skip the potatoes. Probably thinks that there's maybe some of her grandson's blood in there. Although you'd hope they've already prepared them, but she's gone off the idea of potatoes. And then here is the witch with her first aid skills, rather impressive mouse adapted first aid skills, wrapping her black lacy handkerchief around his tail, stopping the bleeding. No worries. Job's a good un. And then in comes good old Mr. Jenkins. Hey, up. It's only old chuffing Mr. Jenkins, innit? Coming in, causing a commotion. He's like the wet. That's not me chuffing, son. It's a bloody mouse, woman. What you talking about? And the grandmama says, look, it is. Bruno pipes up. Then he's got to believe it. And she says, oi, the Grand Eye Witch did it. But just then, maybe this saved his bacon. He might have been frazzled himself, but woof. The delayed action mouse maker. Good old Formula 86. It's a classic. We all know it. There it is in full effect. Alarm clocks out the window. The witches are mice. Bish, bosh, bash. Goodbye, all 84 remaining witches of England. Unless one of them maybe skipped the suit, maybe one could be ill up in the hotel room, maybe one's left early, had other arrangements, who knows. There might be a Witches 2 coming soon that we just don't know about. The long-awaited sequel of The Witches, Revenge of the Witch, and she's become not only the only remaining witch in England, but she has taken the place of the Grand High Witch of all of England and all of the world. This could be a sequel. But as far as we're aware, all the witches of England have been mouseified. Completely and utterly mouseified. Full mouse action, and it's not going to focus on the book, but it's okay. No, it's tired. The webcam is tired. And then oh, what did I say? Did I say grandson's skills? Oh. Did I say Grand High Witches skills? Oh, did I say the witches? It's okay. Yeah, you can let me off. And then we have the doorman whistling for the cab. Grandmama looks very pleased with herself, and the boy mouse just plain chilling. And look at this as well. Not mentioned in the story. But there's a completely KO'd little mouse here. I'm guessing that's one of the witches that's croaked. Brutal. Alright. So, 2 chapters to go. We are finishing. Roald Dahl's The Witches on the Foxy Book Club. And greetings to Michelle, and welcome back to Jake's Great Adventures. I did say hello to you earlier, but I think you'd popped off again. Nice to see you. Okay, 2 to go. 2 to go. It's been a very, very, very fun story. I'm sure you've enjoyed it. Okay. The Heart of a Mouse. It was lovely to be back in Norway once again in my grandmother's fine old house. But now that I was so small, everything looked different, and it took me quite a while to find my way around. Mine was a world of carpets and table legs and chair legs, and the little crannies behind large pieces of furniture. A closed door could not be opened, and nothing could be reached that was on a table. But after a few days, my grandmother began to invent gadgets for me in order to make life a bit easier. She got a carpenter to put together a number of slim, tall step ladders, and she placed one of these against each table in the house that I could climb up whenever I wanted to. She herself invented a wonderful door-opening device made out of wires and springs and pulleys, with heavy weights dangling on cords, and soon every door in the house had a door opener on it. All I had to do was to press my front paws onto a tiny wooden platform, and hey presto, a spring would stretch and a weight would drop, and the door would swing open. Next, she rigged up an equally ingenious system whereby I could switch on the light whenever I entered a room at night. I cannot explain how it worked because I know nothing about electricity, but there was a little button let into the floor near the door in every room in the house, and when I pressed the button gently with one paw, the light would come on. When I pressed it a second time, the light would go off again. My grandmother made me a tiny toothbrush, using a matchstick for the handle, and into this she stuck little bits of bristle that she had snipped off one of her hairbrushes. "You must not get any holes in your teeth," she said. "I can't take a mouse to a dentist. He'd think I was crazy." "It's funny," I said, "but ever since I became a mouse, I've hated the taste of sweets and chocolate, so I don't think I'll get any holes." "You are still going to brush your teeth after every meal," my grandmother said. And I did. For a bathtub, she gave me a silver sugar basin, and I bathed in it every night before going to bed. She allowed no one else into the house, not even a servant or a cook. We kept entirely to ourselves, and we were very happy in each other's company. One evening, as I lay on my grandmother's lap in front of the fire, she said to me, "I wonder what happened to that little Bruno." I won't be surprised if his father gave him to the hall porter to drown in the fire bucket, I answered. I'm afraid you may be right, my grandmother said. The poor little thing. We were silent for a few minutes, my grandmother puffing away at her black cigar, while I dozed comfortably in the warmth. Can I ask you something, Grandmamma? I said. Ask me anything you like, my darling. How long does a mouse live? Ah, she said. I've been waiting for you to ask me that. There was a silence. She sat there, smoking away and gazing at the fire. Well, I said, how long do we live, us mice? I have been reading about mice, she said. I've been trying to find out everything I can about them. Go on then, Grandmamma. Why don't you tell me? If you really want to know, she said, I'm afraid a mouse doesn't live for a very long time. How long? I asked. Well, an ordinary mouse only lives for about 3 years, she said. But you are not an ordinary mouse. You are a mouse person, and that is a very different matter. How different? I asked. How long does a mouse person live, Grandmamma? Longer, she said. Much longer. A mouse person will almost certainly live for 3 times as long as an ordinary mouse, my grandmother said. About 9 years. Good, I cried. That's great. It's the best news I've ever had. Why do you say that? She asked, surprised. Because I would never want to live longer than you, I said. I couldn't stand being looked after by anybody else. There was a short silence. She had a way of fondling me behind the ears with the tip of one finger. It felt lovely. How old are you, Grandmamma? I asked. I'm 86, she said. Will you live another 8 or 9 years? I might, she said, with a bit of luck. You've got to, I said, because by then I'll be a very old mouse and you'll be a very old grandmother, and soon after that we'll both die together. That would be perfect, she said. I had a little doze after that. I just shut my eyes and thought of nothing and felt at peace with the world. Would you like me to tell you something about yourself that is very interesting? My grandmother said. Yes, please, Grandmamma, I said, without opening my eyes. I couldn't believe it at first, but apparently it's quite true, she said. What is it? I asked. The heart of a mouse, she said, and that means your heart, is beating at the rate of 500 times a minute. Isn't that amazing? That's not possible, I said, opening my eyes wide. It's as true as I'm sitting here, she said. It's a sort of miracle. That's nearly 9 beats every second, I cried, working it out in my head. Correct, she said. Your heart is going so fast it's impossible to hear the separate beats. All one hears is a soft humming sound. She was wearing a lace dress, and the lace kept tickling my nose. I had to rest my head on my front paws. Have you ever heard my heart humming away, Grandmamma? I asked her. Often, she said. I hear it when you are lying very close to me on the pillow at night. The two of us remained silent in front of the fire for a long time after that, thinking about these wonderful things. My darling, she said at last, are you sure you don't mind being a mouse for the rest of your life? I don't mind at all, I said. It doesn't matter who you are or what you look like, so long as somebody loves you. The real final chapter. It's off to work we go. For supper that evening, my grandmother had a plain omelette and one slice of bread. I had a piece of that brown Norwegian goat's milk cheese known as Gjetost, which I had loved even when I was a boy. We ate in front of the fire, my grandmother in her armchair, and me on the table with my cheese on a small plate. Grandmamma, I said, now that we have done away with the Grand High Witch, will all the other witches in the world gradually disappear? I'm quite sure they won't, she answered. I stopped chewing and stared at her. But they must, I cried. Surely they must. I'm afraid not, she said. But if she's not there any longer, how are they going to get all the money they need? And who is going to give them orders and jazz them up at the annual meetings and invent all their magic formulas for them? When a queen bee dies, there is always another queen in the hive ready to take her place, my grandmother said. It's the same with witches. In the great headquarters where the Grand High Witch lives, there is always another Grand High Witch waiting in the wings to take over should anything happen. Oh no, I cried. That means everything we did was for nothing. Have I become a mouse for nothing at all? We saved the children of England, she said. I don't call that nothing. I know, I cried. But that's not nearly good enough. I felt sure that all the witches of the world would slowly fade away after we had got rid of their leader. Now you tell me that everything is going to go on just the same as before. Not exactly as before, my grandmother said. For instance, there are no longer any witches in England. That's quite a triumph, isn't it? But what about the rest of the world? I cried. What about America and France and Holland and Germany? And what about Norway? You must not think I have been sitting back and doing nothing these last few days, she said. I've been giving a great deal of thought and time to that particular problem. I was looking up at her face when she said this, and all at once I noticed that a little secret smile was beginning to spread slowly around her eyes and the corners of her mouth. Why are you smiling, Grandmamma? I asked her. I have some rather interesting news for you, she said. What news? Shall I tell it to you right from the beginning? Yes, please, I said. I like good news. She had finished her omelette, and I had had enough of my cheese. She wiped her lips with a napkin and said, As soon as we arrived back in Norway, I picked up the telephone and made a call to England. Who in England, Grandmamma? To the Chief of Police in Bournemouth, my darling. I told him I was the chief of police for the whole of Norway and that I was interested in the peculiar happenings that had taken place recently in the Hotel Magnificent. Now, hang on a sec, Grandmama, I said. There's no way an English policeman is going to believe that you are the head of the Norwegian police. I am very good at imitating a man's voice, she said. Of course he believed me. The policeman in Bournemouth was honoured to get a call from the chief of police for the whole of Norway. So, what did you ask him? I asked him for the name and address of the lady who had been living in room 454 in the Hotel Magnificent, the one who disappeared. You mean the Grand High Witch? I cried. Yes, my darling. And did he give it to you? Naturally he gave it to me. One policeman will always help another policeman. By golly, you've got a nerve, Grandmama. I wanted her address, my grandmother said. But did he know her address? He did indeed. They had found her passport in her room and her address was in it. It was also in the hotel register. Everyone who stays in a hotel has to put a name and address in the book. But surely the Grand High Witch wouldn't have put her real name and address in the hotel register, I said. Why ever not? My grandmother said. Nobody in the world had the faintest idea who she was except the other witches. Wherever she went, people simply knew her as a nice lady. You, my darling, and you alone, were the only non-witch ever to see her with her mask off. Even in her home district, in the village where she lived, people knew her as a kindly and very wealthy baroness who gave large sums of money to charity. I have checked up on that. I was getting excited now. And that address you got, Grandmama, that must have been the secret headquarters of the Grand High Witch. It still is, my grandmother said. And that will be where the new Grand High Witch is certain to be living at this very moment with her retinue of special assistant witches. Important rulers are always surrounded by a large retinue of assistants. Where is her headquarters, Grandmama? I cried. Tell me quick where it is. It is a castle, my grandmother said. And the fascinating thing is that in that castle will be all the names and addresses of all the witches in the world. How else could a Grand High Witch run her business? How else could she summon the witches of the various countries to their annual meetings? Where is the castle, Grandmama? I cried impatiently. Which country? Tell me quick. Guess, she said. Norway, I cried. Right first time, she answered. High up in the mountains above a small village. This was thrilling news. I did a little dance of excitement on the tabletop. My grandmother was getting pretty worked up herself, and now she heaved herself out of her chair and began pacing up and down the room, thumping the carpet with her stick. So we have work to do, you and I, she cried out. We have a great task ahead of us. Thank heavens you are a mouse. A mouse can go anywhere. All I'll have to do is put you down somewhere near the Grand High Witch's castle, and you will very easily be able to get inside it and creep around, looking and listening to your heart's content. I will, I answered. No one will ever see me. Moving about in a big castle will be child's play compared to going into a crowded kitchen full of cooks and waiters. You could spend days in there if necessary, my grandmother cried. In her excitement, she was waving her stick all over the place, and suddenly she knocked over a tall and very beautiful vase that went crashing onto the floor and smashed into a million pieces. Forget it, she said. It's only Ming. You could spend weeks in that castle if you wanted to, and they'd never know you were there. I myself would get a room in the village, and you could sneak out of the castle and have supper with me every night and tell me what was going on." I could! I cried out. And inside the castle I could go snooping around simply everywhere. "But your main job, of course," my grandmother said, "would be to destroy every witch in the place. That would really be the end of the whole organisation." "Me? Destroy them?" I cried. "How could I do that?" "Can't you guess?" she said. "Tell me," I said. "Mouse maker!" my grandmother shouted. "Formula 86 delayed action mouse maker all over again. You will feed it to everyone in the castle by putting drops of it into their food. You do remember the recipe, don't you?" "Every bit of it," I answered. You mean we're going to make it ourselves?" "Why not?" she cried. "If they can make it, so can we. It's just a question of knowing what goes in it." "Who's going to climb up the tall trees to get the Gruntl's eggs?" I asked her. "I will," she cried. "I'll do it myself. There's plenty of life in this old dog yet." "I think I'd better do that part of it, Grandmama. You might come a cropper." "Those are just details," she cried, waving her stick again. "We shall let nothing stand in our way." "And what happens after that?" I asked her. "After the new Grand High Witch and everybody else in the castle have been turned into mice?" "Then the castle will be completely empty, and I shall come in and join you and—" "Wait!" I cried. "Hold on, Grandmama. I've just had a nasty thought." "What nasty thought?" she said. "When the mouse maker turned me into a mouse," I said, "I didn't become just any old, ordinary mouse that you can catch with mouse traps. I became a talking, thinking, intelligent mouse person who wouldn't go near a mouse trap." My grandmother stopped dead in her tracks. She already knew what was coming next. "Therefore," I went on, "if we use the mouse maker to turn the new Grand High Witch and all the other witches in the castle into mice, the whole place will be swarming with very clever, very nasty, very dangerous, talking, thinking mouse witches. They'll all be witches in mouse's clothing. And that," I added, "could be very horrible indeed." "By golly, you're right," she cried. "That never occurred to me. I couldn't possibly take on a castle full of mouse witches," I said. "Nor could I," she said. "They'd have to be got rid of at once. They'd have to be smashed and bashed and chopped up into little pieces exactly as they were in the Hotel Magnificent." "I'm not doing that," I said. "I couldn't anyway. I don't think you could either, Grandmama. And mousetraps wouldn't be the slightest use. By the way," I added, "the Grand High Witch who did me in was wrong about mousetraps, wasn't she?" Yes, my grandmother said impatiently. "But I'm not concerned with that Grand High Witch. She's been chopped up long ago by the hotel chef. It's the new Grand High Witch we've got to deal with now, the one up in the castle, and all her assistants. A Grand High Witch is bad enough when she's disguised as a lady. But just think of what she could do if she were a mouse. She could go anywhere." "I've got it!" I shouted, leaping about a foot in the air. "I've got the answer." "Tell me," my grandmother snapped. "The answer is cats!" I shouted. "Bring on the cats!" My grandmother stared at me. Then a great grin spread over her face and she shouted, "It's brilliant! Absolutely brilliant! Shove half a dozen cats into that castle," I cried, "and they'll kill every mouse in the place in 5 minutes. I don't care how clever they are." "You're a magician," my grandmother shouted, starting to wave her stick about once again. "Look out for the vases, Grandmama." "To heck with the vases," she shouted. "I'm so thrilled I don't care if I break the lot." "Just one thing," I said. "You've got to make absolutely sure I'm well out of the way myself before you put the cats in." "That's a promise," she said. "What will we do after the cats have killed all the mice?" I asked her. "I'll take all the cats back to the village, and then you and I will have the castle completely to ourselves." "And then?" I said. "Then we shall go through the records and get the names and addresses of all the witches in the whole wide world." "And after that?" I said, quivering with excitement. "After that, my darling, the greatest task of all will begin for you and me. We shall pack our bags and go travelling all over the world. In every country we visit, we shall seek out the houses where the witches are living. We shall find each house one by one, and having found it, you will creep inside and leave your little drops of deadly mouse maker in the bread or the cornflakes or the rice pudding or whatever food you see lying about. It will be a triumph, my darling, a colossal, unbeatable triumph. We shall do it entirely by ourselves, just you and me. That will be our work for the rest of our lives." My grandmother picked me off the table and kissed me on the nose. "Oh, my goodness me, we're going to be busy these next few weeks and months and years," she cried. "I think we are," I said. "But what fun and excitement it's going to be." "You can say that again," my grandmother cried, giving me another kiss. "I can't wait to get started." The end. Or the end of the beginning, in many ways. The job is just beginning to start. For the boy and the grandmother, the Van Helsing of the Roald Dahl universe, off to slay the witches, sort of the Dracula of Roald Dahl's universe. And that's it. We've made it. We've made it through the witches, Fox fans. You saw it here first on the Foxy Book Club. I really, really hope you enjoyed it. I'm shattered. I'm tired. I'm not gonna lie. My back is aching. I'm hungry. I'm thirsty. I'm tired. But I genuinely, really, really enjoyed it. Even with the power cut and the disconnection and it being longer than I expected. It was Foxy Book Club. No, but it's been really, really nice. It's been really nice to have you. Yeah, gotta put the effort in sometimes. You know, we'd only had a 2.5 hour Lord of the Rings chapter last time, so I've been slacking. So we needed to put the work in And there we have it. And I saw the Metal Farmer popping in, and Madeline Fee. Very, very nice to see you both. And Wei Chen as well. And have you only just arrived, Wei Chen, as well? Yeah, yeah. 3 of you. Fox fan veterans coming in late there. But yeah, you can rewatch, and like I've said, I will be finishing off my edited complete video of The Witches as well. Oh, we do just have a few pictures as well before I go. I'm definitely going to go and have a lie down. I need to make some food though, and it's 11:15. But you know, sometimes there's more important things than food. Here is the grandmother's house in Norway. Now equipped with new inventions. We've got a door opener, we've got a light switch, and a giant ladder. All fit, kitted out for optimum mouse mobility and convenience. That's what we like to see. Good work. And we've also got the toothbrush. So he can brush his teeth in the little egg cup basin. Very sweet. Even though he feels like he doesn't need to. But and he's also bathing now as well, which is interesting because the grandmother said that children should never bath. It's a waste of time and it's dangerous. It's dangerous when witches can come after you. And they are in a witch-infested country, but I'm supposing that mouse people don't smell the same as like thorough, regular children. So perhaps it's safe to do this. And here we are, very much as we started, but rather than the boy sat with the grandmother, we have the mouse sat with the grandmother and the cigar. It's almost identical to the picture right at the beginning, and I was trying to recapture the mood of the first chapters before all the excitement starts again, but I was just calming things down a little bit. I think I'm not sure if I've already done a Foxy Foxy Book Club ringtone or not. Like on the Google Drive, there are 3 like little ringtones that people were asking me to sort of put together at the time. I'm thinking it wasn't Madeline Fee that. No, who was it? Maybe it was Madeline Fee. I can't remember that. Who'd asked me to do a couple of those. But then maybe there isn't a Foxy Foxy Book Club one actually. There might not be. And then this was very sweet, I thought. Lovely words from the boy there. It doesn't matter who you are or what you look like, so long as somebody loves you. It was very sweet. And he's in bed there, cozy, with grandmother who takes such good care of him. And then it's quite a sweet picture. This is all the grandmother wiping her mouth whilst they're discussing the plan. And she's been busy. She's kept her cards close to her chest as well. But the boy does see a flaw. Quickly solves it, and there is the jump for joy. As he realises what they can do. It's such a cute little picture. I don't know how you can make... I mean, mice are cute, in my opinion, already, but that is just so adorable. Some people heading off. Yeah. Get yourself back to chapter 4 of The Two Towers. It was an absolute pleasure. That was such a fantastic chapter. I really hope you're enjoying it. I mean, yeah, I won't spoil it just in case there's anybody who's not got to chapter 4 yet that's wanting to listen. But go and listen to that chapter. It's so good. And is there one more picture? Yeah, one more picture. Yeah, it's been really nice to have you all here. I hope you've enjoyed it, and hope you've enjoyed this story. We had that 3-month gap. I can't believe how quickly those months passed. I've been pretty busy in my personal life, so it's gone faster than... Or it felt much faster than it actually was. 3 months, gosh. But yeah, I liked how she was just like, it's only Ming, and heck to the vases. She's on a mission here. And then this is the final shot. Kissing him on the nose. About to start on their mission. Lovely stuff. And hopefully they've got about 9 years to do it in. And what will the world look like without any witches in it? I hope they manage. And here are the back illustrations as well. Very nice. With some colour added as well. And look at this. Yeah, the blue spit doesn't really come into it again after the beginning, but lovely description of the witches and how to identify them and everything. And I like how the Grand High Witch is saying this here as well. Find out more about Roald Dahl by visiting the website at www.roalddahl.com for Lucy. Lovely stuff. Well done, Roald Dahl. One of his many, many wonderful, wonderful stories for children and adults alike. Lovely stuff. Lovely stuff. Really nice to hear those thoughts. Glad you've been hammering chapter 4 as well, Michelle. Lovely stuff. Thank you, Gabby. Yeah, that's lovely, that, Juz. I'll really try and do a calmer reading at some point with some pictures as well. I'm just not sure what it could be, because I've got this illustrated Alice in Wonderland, but that's very zany. And then I've got Pride and Prejudice, but I do like to get into the characters and everything with Pride and Prejudice. And then I do have an illustrated children's nursery rhyme book, but it's almost too childish, I think. I've been hesitant whether to read that. I think it's a little bit too light. But yeah, like a calmer picture story that's not too childish would be really nice, I think. Oh wow, a deep man's voice for Eowyn. Yeah, I mean, it's very tricky, you know, if you do have a deep voice. Some people don't like it when a man lightens their voice to play a woman. Some people think it's really necessary, but it's tricky, of course. But yeah, that is the plan, Alex. That is the plan. So we'll see how it goes. Eowyn is appearing pretty soon, so yeah, that's the plan. Yeah, it was a nice scene, Mama Fox. I was really enjoying the Mr. Jenkins stuff, and yeah, it was a shame to get that broken up, but you know, we made it work, didn't we? We made it work. I will do. Thanks, Olivia. Thanks, everybody. Shannon and T-Class. I don't know if you've gone now already. Thank you, Laura. And Lightweaver and anybody else who's still hanging out right to the end. And thank you for, you know, reconnecting and everything when I'd got disconnected. And sticking with me. It's been very nice indeed. Alright, book clubbers, Fox fans, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope it's been good fun for a few hours of your day today, and You can obviously rewatch anything that you've missed. At first, it will only save the first couple of hours, as always, but once YouTube has processed it, you'll be able to watch back the whole thing. All right, everybody. Likewise, Sasha. High fives all around. Good night, everybody. It's been a pleasure. Take care. There will be more Lord of the Rings coming soon. The Complete Witches coming soon. And let's see what else I get to you over the next couple of weeks. And I will definitely be looking to have some more live streams soon as well. I won't just schedule something right here, right now, but look out for the notification. You can always follow me on Discord. I always give the first heads up there. If there's going to be a heads up, it's going to be on Discord. So the link is in the video description if you want to follow me on Discord and get the news. Thank you, Sherry. Good night, Michelle. And good night to Wei Chen. Yeah, Victoria, and all the rest of you. Juz. It's been lovely to have you here. Take care, everybody. Yeah, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. Read to you soon.